With the recent trade of Jamie Drysdale from Anaheim, some insiders suggest that Trevor Zegras could be on the move this offseason. We'll dive into the possibility of Montreal and Kent Hughes maybe going after Caufield's best buddy and why it could maybe work for the Habs. Plus, Nick Suzuki on the front-runner list for the Selke Trophy according to The Athletic. And finally, the Habs make a bit of an interesting but maybe not so surprising move. All of that on this episode of Habs Digest. We're just going to dive straight into it. And look, this, I don't want to say it caught me by surprise, but this roster move was, well, it's interesting to say the least, Jesse. It's a guy we all know, and it's Gustav Lindstrom, and he was placed on waivers. Now, we know Montreal has had a defensive logjam. We know Raphael Harvey-Pinard is joining the team on this road trip. Could very well be making some room for him in the lineup. I mean, some stuff needed to happen. But after recent discussions about how Montreal's decor is jam-packed and Laval's decor is jam-packed, like, maybe they were like, oh, maybe we can get Lindstrom down in Laval to hold on to him, maybe get some trade value, because they gave up Jeff Petrie for this guy and a pick, right, at the same time, and he served the team well, but I can't help but think he's going to get claimed on waivers by a team like Chicago or some other team that wants some right-handed D-depth, because at a price tag of under $1 million, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like we're going to lose him for nothing, and I feel like it kind of hurts, you know, because I like him.
It's true. He's played very well in his short tenure. I'd say like a lot of us Habs fans, we've been, pleasantly surprised by his play. So for sure, it wouldn't be a huge surprise, if he does get claimed. All the same, it's like, not only do we have a log jam, with Montreal, but also with Laval right now. It'd be so nice to kind of keep him in the organization because that was still a good move by Kent Hughes. We think, oh, it's just kind of a whatever sort of waiver pickup. That turns out like Gustav Lindstrom was a very serviceable player for us when we really need him, especially with David Savard being out and everything else like that. So you have to feel like he can add value to another NHL team. We just obviously have so much defensemen, not just with the Habs right now, but also with the Rocket.
Yeah, like when Montreal acquired him, it was kind of like, I remember looking at the scouting report. Yeah, he's kind of a seventh D-man, and that was kind of what he was. But when he got that chance on offense, he scored 3 goals this season, I think. He had some weird offensive upside that no one really expected. He was a big body, and yeah, he made lots of mistakes as well. But like you said, I think another team is probably going to pick him up at this price tag. But hey, we'll see tomorrow. But at the same time, yeah, again, it's one of these things. A trade got to come sooner than later because if you're having to waive guys that maybe you could get some value for, that's where it starts to get a little iffy. And I know it's not like Kent Hughes is going to go make a deal that he doesn't like just to get rid of a defenseman. But if you lose a guy for nothing, is what it is. But again, it's not like Lindstrom had a ton of value. But what do you guys think? Do you like Lindstrom? Are you kind of upset with him being put on waivers? Let us know down below. We'd love to hear from you. But we got to transition into some other stuff and some positive stuff here. So The Athletic put out an article talking about the award races. Of course, the Hart, you see McKinnon, you see McDavid, you see Kucherov, you see all these guys' names. But the Selke is where it gets interesting. And they actually have Suzuki as number 1 on their defensive rating metric. 3.0 next, Sam Reinhart and some other perennial Selke favorites there with Barkov. You see Kopitar, you see Couturier, who's finally back and healthy. He's been known for defense. Joel Eriksson Ek, and I mean obviously a lot of other guys here. But Suzuki tops their defensive rating metric, and they say while he barely met the penalty kill cutoff, he's really elevated his defensive play this year. He's been on the ice for 2.29 expected goals against. It's only 2.06 goals against per 60. Some of his advanced stats are crazy. And take a look at this JFresh card to just make that point clear. His even strength defensive wins above replacement, as in his value on defense at even strength, is in the 99th percentile of the NHL. That is absolutely absurd. And while these metrics show that his offensive production has been down, you can see his primary shot assists, his high danger passes, his chance assists. They're all still really good. It's just that his line mates aren't necessarily finishing what's happening on offense. And, with the nature of Selke voters, Jesse, often favoring two-way forwards, guys who can still score a lot and be good on defense, and Suzuki being on 70-point pace on a not-so-great offensive team, I feel like it's not that crazy to have him right up there with the Selke favorites.
Nick Suzuki is the next Patrice Bergeron. Yeah. And that's been the big question in the league right now. Since Patrice Bergeron retired, who's going to be the next best, defensive centerman, but obviously that can still put up points, right? And the answer to that is look no further than Slick Nick, who modeled his game after Patrice Bergeron. This was a player he watched the most growing up. And when asked, he said, this is who I would watch him all the time. And this is who I modeled my game after, specifically. So this has to feel so gratifying for Nick Suzuki, finally kind of getting some of the respect he deserves because he's quietly such a great player. Like this two-way play is what really contributes to this winning hockey. I'm so excited not only to see him kind of getting his props, being in that conversation, he could, possibly even win this, but also like the possibility of him on a first line now with Juraj Slafkovsky, who we know we can play good defensively, but also good offensively as well. I see both those players being very hard to play against, but then also putting up a lot of points. So I mean, I see that as a very good combination.
Oh, for sure. It's just so cool to see. And I mean, a big thing for him too this year has been his face-offs, and I think it's a lot easier to put him out in big defensive zone draws this season. I mean, you're still probably going to favor Evans or Monahan in those situations just for the draw, but Suzuki's face-off percentage has shot up so high this year, and his defensive responsibility, while again sacrificing maybe a bit of even strength offense, not quite as explosive, not really looking for a shot as much. It is what it is. He's really focused on defense. It's just wonderful to see. There's lots of pictures I'm seeing, like you said, with him, with Patrice Bergeron, just talking to each other, learning the secrets of the trade, right? But to have him up there, the Athletic acknowledging, having like he's number one in our metric, and like he might just be the guy. It's kind of crazy because I feel like we knew he was good defensively this year. We're like, oh yeah, he's looked real good, but this good, I don't want to say I'm surprised because I'm not, but it's certainly an amazing thing to see. And the final thing we got to talk about in this video is, okay, is this trade ridiculous? Yeah, the answer is yes, because I personally don't think it's going to happen. And don't click away yet, but because we got to talk about this. But look, we've talked about the Zegras to Montreal rumors before, and they were sort of unsubstantiated. It was before the contract extension, but now they're resurfacing. And on the Ray and Dregs podcast, they suggested that there are some insiders, or people in management in the NHL that suggest they think that Zegras could be on the move. Of course, he was good friends with Jamie Drysdale, who seemingly out of nowhere got traded for Cutter Gauthier. And now Anaheim's kind of like, well, what do we do, right? So we got Trevor Zegras, who's now in the first year of his 3-year, $17.25 million extension with a point production that hasn't been quite up to standard for him. Jesse, what do you think? Do you think there's a world where this offseason Kent Hughes can make a big swing for Trevor Zegras, one of Cole Caufield's closest buddies?
It's actually funny, Josh, because this is actually kind of shaping into one of those kind of like buy low kind of, and then sell high, get that great asset as a return that Kent Hughes likes so much. But that being said, I think he knows well to kind of steer clear. Very much related to like our conversation earlier with Nick Suzuki of just like, he wants players that are really contributing to winning hockey. I think that's why we pick somebody like a Juraj Slafkovsky over a Logan Cooley, somebody who can affect both sides of the ice, because not everything kind of shows up in those statistics. And even that being said, for Trevor Zegras this year, even though he has stepped up his defensive game, like, 4 goals, 3 assists, it's definitely, not what you're expecting for such a highly touted offensive player. Now, that being said, obviously his trade value has to be lower than ever. It's like, okay, is it Jake Allen for Trevor Zegras right now? But I think, Kent Hughes knows, like, for much of my time as a Habs fan, it's been either like Alex Kovalev or Jonathan Drouin. And to be honest, I'm just so happy of this next chapter that we have with the Habs right now, where we don't really have too many of those guys right now where like it's just offense and then no defense whatsoever. Of course, it's like, for winning games in the playoffs, having those Nick Suzuki, having those Juraj Slafkovsky types, which Kent Hughes has made it very clear it's all about the playoffs. I think he's going to be going for those type of players. So while it can be said that maybe it's the kind of that buy low type of move that he loves so much, I think, Kent Hughes is going to pass on this one.
I would think so too. And I mean, like, that's not to say I wouldn't like Trevor Zegras on the Montreal Canadiens under any circumstances. No, I think Trevor Zegras is a fantastic player. And again, you still get him for, if you can somehow, for some reason, Pat Verbeek in Anaheim decides to move on from Trevor Zegras. I mean, look, I know there have been talks that there was some unhappiness between Zegras, his agent, and Pat Verbeek and the Ducks. But also must make it clear that the Ducks, at least Pat Verbeek, has been traditionally very tight-lipped. Like, nothing really leaks. We didn't hear anything about this Gauthier for Drysdale trade until it happened, right? And I don't know if I said Drysdale earlier. It was Drysdale. Anyway, either way, you guys know who I'm talking about. But at the same time, like, now you're hearing from insiders saying Zegras could be on the move. It's probably all just speculation. But at the same time, if the price is right, I can see Hughes going for it if the Ducks are, willing buyers, because, he's a good fit and he's friends with Caufield. He does bring an offensive spark to the team, and at only 5.2 for the next 2 seasons, It's a reasonable contract, and then he's still a restricted free agent where you can figure out where to go from there. So it's highly unlikely, but we'd love to hear from you guys down below. What do you think about Zegras? Should he be a Hab? Should he not? Should Ken Hughes just completely steer clear like maybe we're suggesting? Let us know down below. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. I don't know, there's no real goal now, but if you want to hit the button and support us, we'd really appreciate it. I'm Josh Gosse for my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.